The Silver Arrows are going through their worst season in the last 10 years, with the team being far behind McLaren at P4 in the Constructors Standings. But in the longest season in F1 history, things still might change because major upgrades are coming to the W15. Toto Wolff was confident after the Chinese Grand Prix, and it might indeed mean the turning point of the season. But will it come to fruition, and how far is the Brackley-based squad from the top 3 teams? The German manufacturer faced another demanding weekend in China, and despite the hope after a second-place finish in the sprint race with Lewis Hamilton, this potential was of course not realised in the main Grand Prix, with Russell finishing in 6th place, Hamilton coming in 9th. Once again, the team found themselves searching for answers as to why they're unable to fully exploit the potential they believe exists in their W15 car. And despite implementing significant setup changes for both drivers, after the Saturday sprint, there was no significant improvement in potential. As a result, the team admits there is still an element of mystery surrounding the situation. Whether at the team's request or in the case of Hamilton, a driver's own direction, there have been many instances in the last 2 and a bit years of Hamilton, or sometimes George Russell, putting volatile performance swings down to variants of setup experiments. It has tended to be Hamilton. For a while, that was put down to him helping the team explore its troubled car's setup windows in an attempt to unlock something. This year, Hamilton has steered into trouble himself, and he's admitted as much. After qualifying and finishing second in the sprint in Shanghai last weekend, Hamilton started only 18th for the main race after an error in qualifying, and then struggled throughout the Grand Prix before rising into the points with a late flourish. 5 races into this season, Mercedes' revamped W15 has failed to deliver the expected performances, with much discussion revolving around the team's correlation issues. Although they've managed to generate more downforce compared to the W15's predecessors, it has not translated into improved lap times, leaving the team bewildered. Consequently, they've conducted experiments in setup, notably before qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton disclosed that he took a long way in one direction, while George Russell opted for the opposite. For Hamilton, it turned out to be the wrong decision. Hamilton massively overperformed in the sprint event, both in the qualifying and in the race itself, capitalising on the wet conditions, demonstrating both his ability and enthusiasm. And it's a fact that when the car maintains track position, it can competitively challenge within the group of cars consisting of Ferrari, McLaren and Aston Martin. And Hamilton showcased the upper limit of the car's potential on Saturday. However, in both qualifying and Sunday's race, it was Russell who extracted the most from the car. When starting from a lower position, this only equates to a chance to surpass the mentioned rivals if any of them underperform. Therefore, the team's response wasn't merely to one misstep. It addressed a trend observed in the early races, where there was perhaps an overreach at times. Mercedes is, at best, currently the 4th best team, which has led to an attempt to chase too much on the setup. Consequently, they end up playing catch-up throughout the weekend, or making changes for crucial sessions that cannot be reversed, forcing them to then live with the consequences. The lesson learned is essentially to accept the current state of the car and make the best of it until improvements can be made. It's evident that Mercedes must enhance the performance, as the car is simply not quick enough. Russell believed that this improvement is fundamental and something Mercedes must do better. And the team knows this, with Wolff explaining the reasons for that huge swing in performance in China from P2 in the sprint to being far from the podium in the race. I think the car is a difficult car to set up and difficult to drive, and that is why you have these oscillations in performances, in my opinion, he told the media. I think where the car is, where Lewis's car was in the race, was certainly far away from the optimum, and it is driving on a knife edge. So what is it? This is where we are. For Miami, we are bringing some new bits, and it will be interesting to see how they are going to perform there. Mercedes are fourth in the Constructors' Championship on 52 points and without a Grand Prix podium, but while their gap to Red Bull is a considerable 143 points, it's their deficit to Ferrari and McLaren that's creating headlines, given last year Mercedes beat both teams in the championship, and this season they're 99 behind Ferrari and 44 adrift of engine customer McLaren. If we accept the experiment's explanation at face value, it appears that Mercedes is still operating under the assumption of their past championship contention. They must acknowledge that their car currently belongs in the midfield and they need to maximise points each weekend just to contend for P3 in the championship. I believe Lewis did an outstanding job last year in terms of driving consistently, and despite not having the second best car on average over the season, Mercedes maximised their final standing. They need to adopt that kind of attitude again in order to win. Wolff said it's not that this year's car is more difficult than its predecessor, it's that Ferrari and McLaren have taken strides forward. I think the cars were difficult all along these last 2 years, he said. The advantage that we had is that McLaren was not racing us, let's say, the first half of the season, so they weren't that competitive. The Ferrari wasn't as quick and dropped the ball on several occasions, and that's why we were regular podium contender and closest to Red Bull. Now that these teams picked up the performance levels, this is a relative game, and suddenly what was good enough for third last year is just good enough for sixth, and that's why it's tough. The car is as difficult as it has been in the past, tricky for the drivers. George, yesterday when we discussed it, said it was the most tricky qualifying car that he's had so far. So overall, in a way, same symptoms, same. The objective within the Mercedes context is crystal clear: to optimise the aeromechanical interaction, which is currently lacking, and to achieve this, engineers have invested considerable effort, particularly an upgrade package in Miami, which is an important one, is in the works, which will include modifications to the front, top and rear of the car to correct the flow pattern and stabilise the aero map of the W15, especially at certain speed ranges. The detachment of the fluid vane seems to be a significant factor, significantly reducing the car's performance. Moreover, corrections will be made in the central part of the single-seater, particularly in the side pod area, with a likely necessary reshaping to gain a few more cubic meters in the undercut area. It remains to be seen whether the multi-award-winning stable will introduce the long-awaited new rear wing. From the information gathered, we know that it is an update capable of maximising the load at the rear, linked to the beam wing configuration, an imperfect context at the moment, as the combined work of the two current components is not as effective as it should be. Mercedes is poised to implement a step that it hopes will unlock some of the unexpressed potential and, of course, widen the car's tuning window. It's very understandable that Mercedes was very upset about 2021, and it's clear that they did not start off well with the new ground effect regulations. And it's also understandable that Mercedes thought their 2023 car would be much better than their 2022 car, and they believed the same about their 2024 one compared to last year. What I don't understand is why Mercedes has transformed from a championship winning team into a team that can't stop complaining about their car in public, almost as if they're the victims in this horrible situation. If we take the experiment's excuse at face value, seems to me that Merc is still living in the distant past where they were fighting for the championship. They have to accept that their car is properly midfield right now, and they need to maximise the points each weekend to even hope to challenge for P3 in the championship. It does feel sad that if after 3 years of these results, Mercedes still thinks they are in some fight for the top. Moreover, it's unfair to the people in the factory and the team who are doing their best to deliver the best possible car. While the current car is not great, it can still be pretty decent, which requires the team and drivers to work on small improvements. Every time the car is on the track, they need to try and learn more about it. Each small improvement will lead to more understanding and further improvements, and eventually the moment will come when Mercedes can challenge whoever is in front of them again. This is how every team has to approach it if they want to challenge the fastest team. You can't just become the fastest because you want to, because it takes a lot of hard work. It's not about experimental setups or taking huge risks. It's about taking small, steady steps on the path to understanding the car. Do you think with these Miami upgrades, Mercedes can achieve a significant result in South Florida? Let us know down in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you very soon in the next video.